Hey everyone, welcome to another video. Now today we're going to check out a video from Mythvision, who has just had a supposed Greek expert and reading Greek for 60 years apparently, saying that Christ is not a drug according to this man. And let's see what he has to say, because if he's studying Greek for 60 years, you think he's going to know something. So let's have a look.
Welcome back to Mythvision Podcast. I'm Derek Lambert, your host, and I'm joined by an expert in Greek, 60 plus years, Dr. Dennis R. McDonald. How are you? I got a question from Stephen Nelson from crossbible.com. He's a buddy of mine.
But Cross Bible references being fluent in biblical Greek, which isn't all encompassing of all classical Greek from the 8th century BC all the way up until, 1000 AD. He might have done biblical Greek and he might know a few things in biblical Greek, but the question he's going to give here and the things that he's going to pose, you'll see quickly that actually Amen sounds like he's right.
And, you know, there's been quite a bunch of fuss about Amen Hillman and Lady Babylon and all of these enthusiasts that I think are interested in Greek because of his enthusiasm and his excitement, but also I think he's selling them a bunch of bullshit.
Is he talking about the people who are watching him think he's selling us bullshit? Or he's talking about himself, that he thinks Amen's selling the people who watch him bullshit? The only one who's selling ads and making money off YouTube is this guy. Amen Hillman's channel is not monetized, like mine's not monetized. I don't really care about that anymore. But this guy is talking about...
I think he's selling them a bunch of bullshit sometimes.
Selling them a bunch of bullshit. So if Mythvision wants to bring up some sources, I'd be happy to look at them, which you'd hope he'd do with a guy who's sitting across from him with 6 decades in classics, apparently.
But he's doing it in a way that they like, oh, it's entertaining, and I get that. But, you know, we want the truth.
If you wanted the truth, you would pull up the sources. Why does it take me, someone who studied journalism, and someone who's interested in history, to bring you the sources? Like, you're doing this stuff too. You've been on streams with Amen Hillman. Like, he's told you these things. Why? We know why he's doing this. He's doing it for the money. I'm just someone who can sit here and look at the sources for myself, as you can as well. And we're going to do that. We're going to bring all the sources, all the Christ things, to show that these people are lying for the money.
We want to know what really is going on and how to understand this language. So
if you did care about that and you wanted to know and understand the language, you would have a fucking classical philologist on.
We're actually talking about a quote from Euripides, Hippolytus, and Phaedra is there. So I'll show that on the screen here. You can see it, pause the video, check out this image, read it for yourself. And
I guess he forgot to put the screenshot up for everyone to see.
Hillman also claims that when Phaedra asks if the love potion is an ointment, the fact that she uses the adjective Christon, pharmakon, is a groundbreaking piece of linguistic data. This is held to be proof positive that the word Christ is actually a drug term.
Okay, perfect. You just said it right there. The word Christ is a reference to a drug term, but you're kind of playing it off as, it doesn't really matter.
The proper translation of Christon pharmakon should be Christ, with a capital C.
Okay, he doesn't know anything about Greek. I'm just saying, because it's not a C. They didn't have C in ancient Greek. They had C, which is like an X, but it's not the same. The X we're looking for here is he.
To alert readers to the alleged connection between the Judeo-Christian concept of the anointed Messiah and the ancient Greek usage of the drug term cryo for the application of medical and nauseous drugs. Can you explain why Phaedra's reference to a made-up topical drug is a mundane, uneventful usage of a common Greek term to describe an ointment, despite the etymological connection to the later title of Christ, a metaphorically anointed figure? Should you or any of your colleagues view this usage by Euripides of the verbal adjective Christos as being remarkable or having some paradigm-shifting implications?
Did y'all get that? Oh, it's not remarkable. The fact that the term Christ appears way before Christ, it's not remarkable. It's mundane. See how they're trying to push it under the rug now that it's been exposed? They admitted it before.
Is a groundbreaking piece of linguistic data.
That's true. It is a piece of groundbreaking linguistic data, but it's exposed now and everyone can see it and everyone can look at the sources for themselves, which is what we're going to do. And it's hilarious that he brings up, oh, it's mundane and it's an ointment. Well, look at your own English language, mate. Mundane. The definition of mundane is lacking interest or excitement or dull. It is definitely not lacking interest, because you wouldn't be making a video like this on it and multiple videos with multiple other so-called experts who are on the biblical side. It's mundane. How does it lack interest if you keep making videos on it, trying to counter it, but it's failing? Now, you want to say, oh, it's an ointment. That's how it's translated on the Perseus website, which I've shown you before. See? Phaedra. Portera de Christon hepoton to pharmakon. Which of the two forms of the drug is it? Is it a Christ, Christon, or a poton, a drink? Now, look how it translates that. This drug, is it an ointment or a potion? See? You're contrasting what kind of drug it is. Ointment. What is an ointment? In Greek, it is a Christon. Now you want to play semantics with linguistics? Well, let's go look at ointment. What does ointment mean in English? A smooth, oily substance that is rubbed on. Oh, what's that? That's rubbed on. That's how you apply the ointment. So the term Christon is how you apply the medicine. See? Medicinal purposes. In this case, how you apply the pharmakon, the drug. You apply the pharmakon by, here's the verb, kreo, which means to rub and also to smear. We have other instances where it means smear. Arti Christos, fresh bread, pharmakon, Christos, to be rubbed on. See, this is how they're using it, and they're saying ointment. But how do you apply an ointment? According to English, rubbed on. How do you apply pharmakon in this case? Kreo, Christon, rubbed on. All this bullshit about anointing. Anointing. You want to start? Okay, let's go to anointing, because I'm sick of hearing this argument about anointing and all this. Here's when anoint was first used in English. Middle English, 1150. Before that, comes from the Old French anoint. And before that comes from inanguere from Latin, meaning into and to smear. This is what it meant originally. So English is now using the anoint, the French line, which comes from the Latin, not the Greek, which says Christos, Christ, freshly spread, drugs. Look at all the different forms of Christings there are. En Christos, rubbed in, to the eyes. Epi Christos, smeared on. Pharmaca, drugs, smeared. That's how it's applied, smeared, rubbed.
This is held to be proof positive that the word Christ is actually a drug term.
Which I just showed you in the sources. It is a drug term multiple times. There's even more we're going to bring up.
I think Stephen just knocked it out of the park.
Of course you did. What are we going to find out about you? What's hiding? What's hiding behind who you are that we haven't got to yet?
Now, I don't have my Greek lexicon in front of me, and so I haven't done the work myself.
You haven't got the lexicon in front of you, and you haven't done the work yourself. Why the fuck would I listen to you then? You claim to be a classicist, apparently. You've done it for 60 years, but you don't have the lexicon in front of you, and you don't know Euripides, one of the most famous... Okay, this dude... Oh, God.
He certainly is right. Kreo is simply a verb that means to anoint.
Blah, blah, blah. Anoint. Bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. I already told you. Anoint comes from French. Anoint. Which comes from inanguere, Latin. The term they're using here in ancient Greek is to Christ. Christos, Kreo, all the different forms of it. Smear. You want to say anoint, you're talking about rubbing and smearing. That's what you're saying when you're anointing something. You're rubbing it and smearing it. And the original definition was Christos, Christon, Kreo, to rub, to smear. Enough with the anointing.
And yes, it's related to a pharmakon, a drug, if you will.
He just admitted it's related. Christing is related to pharmakon, drugs. How's he going to play this off? He just admitted Christing is a drug.
Could be identified with lots of things.
Kind of sounds like Bart Ehrman, doesn't it? The biblical scholar who got fucking destroyed on Danny Jones. You got a biblical scholar sitting there who sounds like, oh, it could mean this, it could mean that, oh, it could mean lots of different things. I showed you it means lots of different ways to rub and smear drugs. And other things, but a lot of drugs.
The most obvious one is oil, where you have anointing of oil. Now, why would you want to capitalize Christon and not poton? Because that's an either or. The issue is this...
I think this is a etymological, logical fallacy they're doing, because I don't understand what the hell they're doing. No one wants to capitalize the word Christon in Euripides, Hippolytus, because it's not being used that way. This drug, is it a Christ or a drink? I'm not sure why they're bringing this up, the capitalization, like what has to do with anything with Euripides, Hippolytus, and the fact that the term Christon means to Christ drugs in this context.
Pharmakon, this medication, and it's maybe an aphrodisiac. Is it a topical, that is, it is an ointment, or is it potable, that is something you drink? So I think you ought to capitalize Poton too, and look around in the world for a god named Poton.
That's the dumbest fucking thing I've ever heard. See how they play with the English semantics, which I already showed? Oh, ointment. Yeah, what does ointment mean? I just showed you. Since that is rubbed on. What does Creo mean? What does Christing mean? It means to be rubbed on. All of these things they're talking about. Yes, they did it with oil too. But in this case, we're talking about, and you just admitted, they're talking about Christing pharmacon or a drug.
Or potas. You know, it's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. At least he's admitting the shit they're making up is ridiculous.
And by the way, the Greeks, the idea of a Greek text that you have to take the he and capitalize it is irresponsible philologically.
I'm not sure whoever said to capitalize it. I don't know where they're getting this from.
You cannot get away with that. I just think top to bottom, this is just, it's a cause that's looking for evidence and it's screwing up the evidence. That's what it is.
No, it sounds like it's screwing up your, as we'll find out, biblical evidence that you've been hiding from us.
And, you know, he wants to consider Christian or the Christian movement a drug movement and so on. So he already knows that. He's just looking for evidence for it.
And he's finding a lot of it.
This is really foolishness.
It's his one of the go-to that he uses, like a proof text to try and like score points and make people look dumb.
Which worked.
Danny Jones has been like his middleman in accomplishing this. And I really wish Danny had, real, classicists come in. Stephen, I tried to get him, Stephen, right?
So he tried to get his mate from Cross Bible, who he claims is a classicist. All right, whatever. He still cares more about biblical Greek than any other Greek. So you want to start talking shit about Danny not having people on. You're being disingenuous now because you freaking know Danny has tried to have so many people on to debate him, and they won't. And to prove that, I'm going to play this.
I've tried to have like 4 or 5 academics come on the show to like refute him, but they won't come on with him. They all refuse to debate him. A lot of the academics, I talked to a lot of Harvard philologists to try to come debate this guy.
So he's a legit scholar.
He's a legit scholar, PhD.
And other legit scholars are unwilling to even entertain this?
Yes. I've talked to many of them on the phone. One of them said that they just don't want to give him the platform or the credibility of being in the same room. Other people say that it would just take too much time for them to prep for it. I just think it's bullshit.
Damn straight, Danny. So this is either straight up lying from Mythvision or being completely disingenuous. So it's not Danny's fault that he hasn't had people on. It's the people who he's asking. None of them want to go on.
So they tackle these Bible scholars. They had Bart Ehrman in an interview, and it embarrassed Bart, right? And had to have a clip taken out because I think Bart thought that Christos was not used prior to the Septuagint at all in Greek literature. But then again, Bart's also not a classicist at all.
I have to go back and show you the clip Bart was on there because it's absolutely horrific to watch this. As a biblical scholar claiming to know Greek, look how he translates the same line we're talking about.
Yeah, where it says whether it is the anointment or the drug drink.
Drug drink.
So you look at the way he's trying to translate this from a biblical scholar standpoint, as opposed to someone who wrote the translation. So he's looking at it going first, second, third, and then he's saying the drug at the end. Where he's saying drug and then to drink. The drug drink. Whereas it's not that. Look at the translation in English. It says which. And which one is it? Which drug? Christon. Is it a Christ? Or is it a poton? A potable? And this is how it's translated. It's not drug drink. This drug, which is it? And then we see ointment again in the English because they love putting ointment instead of what it actually means, to be rubbed on or smeared, which is what we saw. That's how you apply an ointment, rubbed on. The pharmacon, the drug. Is it a Christ or a potable? A drink. And he says it's a drug drink. There it is right there. Pharmacon, Christon, Euripides, Hippolytus. This is the line. Pharmacon, Christon, drug, Christ. And then he goes on to say, it looks like this is the only place it says it in Euripides. But I'm like, it's not, because it says it in Euripides Medea as well, where she says, I will Christ these gifts with drugs. Chryso, pharmakois, doremata. With such poisons I will smear these gifts. They use it as poisons in this case. But it's a pharmacon. Will I smear Christ these gifts? Now, this is his big mess up.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if anybody uses the actual word Christos before the Septuagint.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think Euripides was long before the Septuagint. If the Septuagint was done around the year 200 BCE or then it'd be about 300 years at least before.
It says 428 BC. So if he's saying 200, it would have been 228 years before the Septuagint was written, according to Bart Ehrman right here. So 228 years before. But we know it's used in Homer, which is like 8th century BC, which is 600 years before the Septuagint. This is the standard and level of Greek on the biblical side, on this biblical scholar side.
Doesn't this say that he uses the word Christ?
No, it's using the word kreo.
Oh, for fuck's sake. He said it was using the verb. He doesn't know the difference between the two.
The verb.
The verb.
I think.
See, this is the standards on the biblical side. Oh, I think. So listen to the comparison between Bart Ehrman and Dennis MacDonald when they are explaining the ways that Christ means anoint. They just jump straight to anoint. Always the biblical people just go straight to anoint.
Kreo is simply a verb that means to anoint.
It comes from a word kreo, which means to anoint.
Classical philologist in here who studied ancient drugs, and he said that the word Christ was originally a word for drugs, meaning to apply drugs to the skin or apply drugs to the eyes. The book of Revelation 3:18, God says, you must Christ your eyes so you may see.
He's using his own book, Revelation 3:18. How is Christ being used? It's not referring to Jesus as the Christ in this, the Messiah, is what they're claiming. He's the anointed, is this. No. It's saying, use a colurion, which is an eye salve, en Chrisai, en Christed, tus ophthalmus, the eyes.
As you must Christ your eyes so you may see.
And as I showed, en Christos means to be rubbed in. So he rubbed in the salve into his eyes. There you go. En Christed it. He rubbed it in as an ointment, which is applied by rubbing in, as we've seen in English.
In the Gospel of Mark, Jesus says you can lift up snakes and drink death poisons that won't hurt you. What do you think about this?
So right here is the English versions of Mark 16:18, where anyone can read it. It says they'll pick up snakes and they'll drink deadly poison. He's not making anything up. It's what the English translation even says. They'll pick up serpents, lift up snakes, and drink any deadly, and if they drink any deadly poison. But the word here is thanasimon, which is a deadly, fatal, and that is usually used in thanasimon with a pharmacon, which is a drug. Thanasimon is used with pharmacon, which is a death-inducing drug. Now look what Bart's going to say. Even though we've seen the English, and they all say the same thing.
No, I'd say it's just categorically false, what he's saying.
Categorically false. I just showed you the English. It's right there. And it says it right here. Mark 16:18. Thanasimon, in the lexicon, pharmakeo, to drug a person. Give him a poisonous or stupefying drug. Thanasimoi. So everything he's saying is true. So Bart wants to counter that and say it's not true, even though we've just seen that it's true.
The term Christ is not always used as drugs.
Right there. 3 different times, separate times it says pharmacon, pharmacon, pharmacon. Christos, Christos, Christos.
It comes from a word kreo, which means to anoint.
Boom, there we go. Comes from the verb kreo. Who said that? Who else said that? Oh yeah, Mr. Ronald McDonald, that's his actual name. Oh, it comes from the verb kreo, which means to anoint. That is the go-to for these religious scholars who really are not very good with Greek. Hey, I'm not saying I'm a fucking expert. I'm just saying, hey, if I can pull this up myself and look at the lexicon for myself, then you can too. Then these people, we don't need them. Kreo does not mean anoint because it's the other way around. Anoint means kreo because anoint comes from English.
And so, of course, some medications in the ancient world were ointments, but it's not everywhere.
And you're using ointment again. See the terminology they're using, ointments. Yeah, we already showed in English. How do you apply that ointment? Rub it on. And now look at all these terms for Christing. He says Christ is not a common word in Greek.
The term Christ doesn't occur very much, actually. The term Christos doesn't occur very much. The word Christ is not a common word in Greek.
Now that dude, Ronald McDonald, said it was ridiculous what they were saying. Yeah, well, this is ridiculous what he's saying. Look at all these versions of Christing. En Christa. Look what they're talking about. Pharmakou apia. Krien. Christing. Christon. Muron. Christing myrrh. Pharmasomene chrimatos. Christing drugs. En Christon again. Epichrista. It's just the different forms of application, honestly. Christon, there we go. Potera de Christon e potanto pharmacon. That's the Euripides line, talking about drugs. Apollonius, Christing ambrosia here with the bottom arrow. Here we go, Aristotle. Pharmacon, chrysantes. Talking about pharmacon, talking about Christing, talking about Egypt. Pharmakoi, Christing drugs. Chrysamenos pharmakoi, top right. Pseudo-Apollodorus. Christing more drugs. Homer, Christing ambrosia. Christing, there you go. Christing oil. Finally, we find our Christing oil. Not drugs. Epichrysting, more drugs down here. Galen, come on, man. How many forms of Christing with drugs can you get? Homer, pharmacon, androphonon, Christing arrows, man-killing drugs. Like, Homer. How did no one see this in Homer? Where are all the philologists? Like, where have they been? Here you go. Christ in purple. Porphyros. Christ in the purple. Christ in purple. And look, pharmakon is a drug, and it's referencing a Christ. Pharmakon Christon. That's Bart Ehrman right there. That's the level of biblical scholarship we have.
At all in Greek literature. But then again, Bart's also not a classicist at all. Like, it's not his field.
And then see how they pass it off. Oh, he's not a classicist. It's not his field. Then why is he saying anything about Greek? Why is he claiming to know Greek?
However, went to Harvard and learned both classics as well as Bible. Correct?
Yeah.
Did you hear that? Doesn't sound very convincing. Did we see any sources in this video? Did we see any information as to where he went and like what his classics PhD, where he got his classics PhD? As soon as I heard, oh, and both Bible, I was like, ah, there it is. Done. We're done here. He's a biblical scholar, and we'll look into his history.
So you got your hands in both worlds, and you're able to kind of see this. And who better than you to kind of take a look at this and go, hey, what the hell's going on with this guy?
If this is the only thing that he can scratch out, it's not in the major literature that the Greeks would have been exposed to. So
what? Euripides was not major literature?
this is an exception one way or the other. But it is not an exceptional problem. The issue is this pharmacon something you apply as an ointment or something that you drink?
See how nonchalantly they're trying to pass this off. Is it something that's an ointment or something you drink? I already showed you. What's an ointment mean? How do you apply it? You apply it by rubbing. What is this saying? You apply the pharmacon, it's going to be Christed, possibly in one of the two forms. But one of those forms is to Christ. And what does that mean? To rub and smear. This isn't this hard. And this whole obfuscation of this fucking narrative to support this bullshit biblical narrative is absolutely disgusting. And I'm fucking sick of it. Rub and smear. That's all you need to bloody know. Rub and smear.
And even its application in the narrative, which Stephen identifies, is problematic.
How's it problematic? Problematic for your fucked up narrative that isn't even true. Because Christ means to smear these drugs. We saw it in Euripides' Medea. We've seen it in Euripides' Hippolytus. So he's using that term way before Jesus, way before Christ, way before the Septuagint. And these people still want to play fucking games.
So then to make that into the background for the Christ, when you have the Septuagint understanding of the anointment of oil for the king, or even I believe a prophet.
Yeah, they do have that. But you know what they also have? Amos 4:13, where it's talking about Apangelon eis anthropos ton Christon auto, proclaims to men his Christ. That's not talking about anointing with oil or anything. That's not talking about anointing at all with oils and what you're talking about. I've even got Hermes Trismegistus, where he's Christing drugs of immortality. Pharmakoi Christos, Christing more drugs in Greek literature.
I mean, it's just wacko. It's a cause looking for evidence and then messing up the evidence.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Messing up your Christian evidence, bro. Now, this is the guy that Mythvision just had on. Dennis Ronald McDonald. Yeah, I know why you put the R instead of the Ronald, because, you know, Maccas and all that. Biblical scholar. So he claimed that he was both classics and Bible. But this says he's a professor of New Testament and Christian origins. So he's done biblical Greek, just like all the other Bible scholars have done biblical Greek, which is just a very narrow lane of Greek. So I think he's famous for the idea that the New Testament were responses to the Homeric epics. So yeah, he claims to be both, but I see no evidence of him studying philology and getting a PhD in philology, only in theology. So he is a professor of New Testament and religious or biblical scholar. Well, if he knows Christian origins, you should read Epiphanius, one of the early church fathers, talking about what all the Gnostic cults were doing. Yep, a lot of sex and a lot of drugs. Those were the early Christian mysteries, according to the early church fathers who are writing about them. So these are the people that are trying to combat the text with another Bible scholar. Well, you just said Mythvision. You just said, why doesn't Danny have any classicists on? This guy's not a classicist. He's not a classics PhD. He's only a biblical scholar. So by your own fucking standards, why don't you have a real classicist on? There you have it. These two talking about Euripides Hippolytus and the word Christon being linked to drug use in ancient Greece. Admittedly, but passing it off nonchalantly as if it doesn't even matter, and even laughing about it. Trying to dismiss this idea so it doesn't get more heat and traction. But I'll tell you what, it's not going away because the sources are available for everyone to see. You can do this too. If you're interested and you want to see the historical sources, what they say for themselves, instead of these people telling you what they say, go do it. It's not that difficult. It's just like reading a book and clicking the dictionary when you don't know a word. That's all you got to do. See how drugs refer to Christing, rubbing and smearing drugs. That's what they were doing. That's what the texts say. There's no refuting that, even though they're trying so hard to.